In the sweltering heat of August 28, 1963, the National Mall in Washington, D.C., transformed into a living sea of humanity as 250,000 voices, black and white, young and old, clergy and labor organizers, students and sharecroppers, converged under the watchful gaze of Abraham Lincoln's marble statue, demanding jobs and freedom in the largest nonviolent protest the nation had ever witnessed. A meticulously orchestrated symphony of hope, masterminded by two unsung architects of justice, A. Philip Randolph, the 74-year-old Pullman porter turned labor titan, who had first threatened a march on Washington in 1941 to force FDR's hand on defense industry discrimination, and Bayard Rustin, the brilliant, openly gay Quaker strategist whose logistical genius turned Randolph's decades-old dream into a reality despite being sidelined by homophobic smears from both Congress and some civil rights leaders. The idea had been resurrected in 1962 amid rising frustration with President Kennedy's slow pace on civil rights. Randolph, now president of the Negro American Labor Council, proposed a march for jobs and freedom to fuse the economic demands of the black working class with the moral crusade against segregation, and Rustin, fresh from organizing the 1957 prayer pilgrimage, accepted the deputy directorship knowing his sexuality made him a liability, yet he built an organizational machine that chartered 2,000 buses, 21 special trains, and 100 airplanes from every corner of the country, coordinated 1,500 portable toilets, 25,000 sandwiches, and a sound system powerful enough to carry Martin Luther King Jr.'s voice across the reflecting pool, while secretly negotiating with the Pentagon to have 19,000 troops on standby in case of violence. As dawn broke on that fateful Wednesday, the first buses rolled into D.C. carrying Mississippi sharecroppers who had never left their plantations, Detroit auto workers who walked picket lines beside Walter Reuther, and Hollywood stars like Marlon Brando, Sidney Poitier, and Charlton Heston, who lent their fame to the cause, all converging on the Washington Monument grounds where Rustin's volunteers, wearing white armbands and carrying walkie-talkies, directed the human tide with military precision, ensuring that the 100,000 pre-made "I was there" buttons were distributed, that Mahalia Jackson's gospel voice warmed up the crowd, and that the 10-point program demanding a $2 minimum wage, federal fair employment practices, and an end to housing discrimination was printed in every program. The Kennedy administration, terrified of riots, had banned alcohol sales, closed the city's liquor stores, and pressured the march organizers to cancel. But when Rustin refused, the White House reluctantly provided 4,000 police and National Guardsmen while secretly wiretapping the organizers. Yet the day unfolded with almost eerie calm, as families picnicked on the grass, children chased balloons, and elderly women in Sunday hats sang "We Shall Overcome" in perfect harmony with white college students from Berkeley. By 11 a.m., the official program began at the Lincoln Memorial with Randolph's opening remarks, his voice cracking with emotion as he declared, "We are the advanced guard of a massive moral revolution for jobs and freedom," followed by speeches from John Lewis, whose original draft condemning Kennedy's civil rights bill as too little too late, was watered down at the last minute under pressure from Catholic Archbishop Patrick O'Boyle, and Roy Wilkins announcing the death of W.E.B. Du Bois in Ghana the previous night. A poignant reminder that the struggle spanned generations. The crowd swelled past capacity, the reflecting pool became a mirror of upturned faces, and the temperature climbed to 87 degrees. Yet the mood remained festive, with Joan Baez leading "Oh Freedom" and Bob Dylan debuting "Only a Pawn in Their Game" about the murder of Medgar Evers, while behind the scenes Rustin frantically managed crises, ensuring that the sound system didn't fail, that the press corps had access, and that the rumored sniper threat from white supremacists never materialized. The emotional crescendo arrived at 3:30 p.m., when Mahalia Jackson, having already moved the crowd to tears with "I been bucked and I been scorned," shouted to King from the podium, "Tell them about the dream, Martin," prompting the young preacher to abandon his prepared text and launch into the improvised peroration that would echo through history. "I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood," his voice rising and falling like a Baptist sermon, each repetition of "Let Freedom Ring," drawing 250,000 souls into a single heartbeat, while television cameras broadcast the moment live to millions, including a stunned President Kennedy watching in the White House. The speech was not just rhetoric, it was a strategic masterstroke, shifting the narrative from confrontation to reconciliation, from economic demands to moral imperative, and it worked. Within hours, Kennedy invited the Big Ten civil rights leaders to the Oval Office, praising the march's dignity while privately admitting to aides that the pressure for legislation was now irresistible. Yet the day's success masked the fractures beneath the surface. Rustin, the logistical genius who had coordinated every detail from the 3,000-member security force to the 80,000 cheese sandwiches, was deliberately excluded from the leadership photo at the White House due to his sexuality and communist past. John Lewis's original fiery speech had been censored, and women leaders like Dorothy Height and Rosa Parks were relegated to the back of the program despite their decades of activism, a glaring omission that would fuel the rise of black feminist critique in the years ahead. Still, the march's impact was seismic. Within 10 months, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, banning discrimination in employment and public accommodations, passed Congress, followed by the Voting Rights Act of 1965, both bearing the fingerprints of the 250,000 who had stood in the August heat. The March on Washington was not the end of the struggle, but a pivot point, a moment when America saw itself in the mirror of the reflecting pool and could no longer look away from the promise unfulfilled, the dream deferred, and the voices 250,000 strong that refused to be silenced any longer.